Hello and welcome to another episode of the Obstacle Race Magazine podcast. I'm here with Kevin. How are you, Kevin?
I'm very good, Mr. Wibberley. It's been a long time.
It has. A couple of weeks off.
Apologies.
You've been sunning yourself.
Yeah.
Right, Kevin. So, are you prepared this week?
I'm prepared.
What
episode? To talk about.
Go on. What episode are we on, though?
32.
No.
31.
31. 31 we are. We've got a few bits and pieces to talk about, but to say we've had like 14 days away from it, there's not a whole lot really happened. A few bits and pieces have changed, and obviously other bits and bobs in terms of how government's dealing with different bits and pieces up and down the UK, up and down England mainly, should I say, seeing as Scotland want to float their own boat at the moment. But yeah, there's in terms of OCR, everything's kind of, I don't know. I think people are waiting to see who's the first one to sort of step in and take on the big challenge of actually putting on a mass participation OCR event rather than just like a trail event or whatever. Obviously, we've already mentioned Forest Warrior, haven't we? In last episode, they managed to successfully put on an event.
Yeah,
and I know you
did it over a full weekend, so it was Saturday and Sunday. Like I said, it was more of a trail event with some natural obstacles in there. So I think there was nothing where your hands would be touching, sort of climbing over things. But after speaking to Andy, who's the race director, I think it was very successful. And a lot of the runners at the finish line were just thanking him for putting something on to quell their boredom.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are desperate to sink their teeth back into something, aren't they? And it's obviously when people have trained, though, and they're training for something, it's always good to have something at the finish line waiting for them, isn't it? Like an actual target to aim for. So probably the biggest news in the last week or so has been Spartan have cancelled the remaining of their 2020 US season. So the whole lot's been cancelled, put on hold, deferred to next year. But to be fair to them, at least they had a crack at it. They tried, didn't they? I think really it's not through not want to trying, it is basically the environment around them that they're in, isn't it? They're just nothing really they can do about that. If the spread's just too much over in the US, then they're just not going to be able to put on an event, are they?
Yeah, I think there's going to be more restrictions coming in the US. You just don't know what to believe with the media now. I'm sort of done with it all, and figures ups and downs and the fear and panic.
Yeah.
And the media love to bash Donald Trump anyway, don't they, with the way he handles anything. So, like I says, the more people are getting tested over there, so they're going to find more cases. And I think that's the same over here. We're seeing the number of cases go up a little bit, but the testing is still very high. So they're going to find more cases. The actual figures of deaths is extremely low. And again, it's only affecting people with underlying health conditions. So we need to have the antibody testing and the vaccines before we can really get back properly to some sort of normal life.
I don't know what latest was on antibody testing, though, because it seems to have gone quiet on that. And my immediate assumption would be that the antibodies don't last that long, possibly. And that's why that avenue's gone a little bit more quiet, unless it just obviously takes a hell of a lot more research to be able to look at that side of things. But is it Germany or Russia that have announced today that they're looking at rolling out the vaccine come October time?
Yeah, it's Russia.
Yeah. And they're rolling out for like how we describe key workers, so medical staff, teachers and people like that, first of all. So that's a pretty fast turnaround, isn't it, really, if you think about it? October, especially when stuff, I'm sure I've read somewhere before that even if they rush something through, it's like an 18-month process for like a new virus to them. So
yeah, I think they're building the sort of the vaccines in readiness, aren't they? And just hoping that they're going to work, so they're just available as quickly as possible, and the Russian government probably is paying for that potential loss if they're not going to be sort of suitable.
Yeah, they even UK, them like England, whatever UK government putting their eggs in a few different baskets at the minute, aren't they? In terms of how many horses they back in on who's going to be the first one to come up with this vaccine. They seem to be betting on a few at the minute. So yeah, that's crap news for US racers. It's not great in terms of UK Spartan. We're still looking at next weekend, so 8th and 9th of August at Marston Lodge in the Midlands for the first of what's described as the Spartan Endurance season.
Should have been Mud 7.
Pardon?
Should have been Mud 7.
Should have been, yeah.
The weather around Coventry next Saturday is in the 30s. So I'm sort of glad that it has moved to the back end of September. And again, for the Hurricane Heats, that's going to put an extra obstacle in the way with the weather.
Yeah, people don't realise that a hot day, in terms of managing an event, a mass participation event, a red hot day is just as bad as a freezing cold day to actually manage, because you've got all these other new different bits and pieces that start popping up, like medical. You get people obviously suffering from dehydration and stuff, and no matter how many water stops you put on a course, it'll never be enough, because we have people spending 30 minutes doing a 7K course, absolutely blasting round, and then get people like out there for 5 or 6 hours, and they don't just need water stations. They need like the whole day's worth of meals preparing for them if they're going to be on course for that long, don't they? They need like a pub stop halfway round to have a Sunday dinner with how long it takes. But do you know what I mean? So it's hard. It is really hard. I'm not dissing how long it takes them. Do you know what I mean? They're getting value for money at the end of the day. I don't blame them, but it is hard from a race like organiser's perspective.
Out, quick, done, finish line, home, done. That's what
yeah. Usually because you need to look after your feet in some way, because you usually manage to damage your feet by doing something like stepping in a puddle or something. You've usually got trench foot by end of the day, haven't you?
Standard. Or hit my finger with a hammer or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So we're kind of used to you being damaged by end of the day. But yeah, it's weird. It's just as, it's like Sim to say, it's just as hard to work with hot conditions as it is with the cooler conditions. It sort of puts you on high alert just as much.
I think a lot of RDs will be looking at next weekend again as a bit of a pilot and seeing what Spartan do, how to make it a safe event, to sort of give us then some.
I think it's easier for them to do a Hurricane Heat though, because the numbers are never that big anyway, are they? So it's not such a huge worry. They're obviously, as part of the challenges, they can make social distancing part of it, can't they? They can sort of rope it all in and say they've got to keep this certain distance apart, else they fail, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like death race style, have this set of rules that they've got to follow. So yeah, but it will be interesting. Yeah. So then we've got to go on. Sorry, Kev.
I was going to say, we're obviously watching as well. We're still getting a lot of emails from people asking about Mud 7, and we're still planning to go ahead on the 26th of September. We've still got people sort of wanting to move to next year. We've still got people entering this year. We've got to put on a safe event. We know that. So we're going to be using the next 8 weeks to do everything we possibly can to make sure we can put an event on for you safely.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know for certain you're constantly watching new guidance updates and stuff, aren't you? To see what we can do to make it that, to be able to, well, first of all, to be able to ensure it happens in the first place, and then second of all, to make sure it's 100% safe to be happening. Because obviously, if it's not going to happen, then there's no one to keep safe, because there's no one there in the first place. But yeah, so 29th and 30th for August, though, then they jump down to the one of my favourite locations, which is Pippinford Park, which is East Sussex way. But that's another endurance one. And because it, I suppose the real big one for Spartan is not until October, is it? October 10th is their trifecta weekend at Bagshot. Beasts, Sprint, Super, and Kids Race all that weekend. So that's like a big one for them.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in terms of them being a testing zone for us, it's obviously after our event would have taken place, so it's no use to us, that one. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes in terms of these hurricane heats. On the topic of Spartan, but more for the sort of across the waters a little bit for the European Championships, they've just had to announce that they're going to be leaving. I think it was Austria it was going to be held in, and because of the restrictions, to be able to ensure that they're still able to put it on, or there's a higher chance that they can put it on, they've moved it to the Canary Islands, to Tenerife, on December the 11th. 11th to exactly, yeah, 11th to the 13th. Could be able to get my words out. Yeah, exactly. But 11th to the 13th of December is pretty, I don't know, for me, as someone who likes to sort of ramp up to Christmas, that is a bit of a tough time to put on an event. I can't imagine, I don't know, because they're allowing people to defer. And now this isn't Spartan in any way, because obviously there are only so many options they can provide without putting themselves under and stuff. So they're allowing people to defer to either next year, from what I understand, or move their place over to Tenerife instead, to the new date. And the only trouble with that is a lot of people are losing a load of money on the hotels that they had booked in Austria. So then quite a few, the main bugbear seems to be they want to do the European Championships, because it was the European Championship race. They really want to do it, but why would they book another hotel again to take that same risk to lose? Because I bet a lot of them are losing probably more on the hotel booking than they would do on the ticket, to just lose the ticket. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. You can understand why people would be wary. So I think it's going to be really difficult for them to be able to put that event on, to be honest. I really do. I can't imagine the numbers are going to be big enough.
Yeah, people flying around from different countries might be a bit restricted.
Yeah, and you don't know where Tenerife's going to be by then either, do you?
Probably still in the Canary Islands.
Well, yeah, probably. I doubt they'll have moved it too far, but at the same time, they could be on a restriction. They could be one of the restricted areas, because obviously we've seen with Spain, as it's had a cluster of cases, they've been put onto the list of places where you need to be going into self-isolation, or however you want to put it. But I just keep saying quarantine. You need to go into quarantine for 14 days when you come back, which obviously a lot of people can't afford to do. I know a lot can work from home, but there are a lot of jobs that you can't do. But yeah, that's all I've really got for OCR, like real OCR news. Have you got anything else, Kevin? You spotted anything else?
Well, yesterday it was the nuclear summer party.
Oh yeah, of course.
So
yeah.
Again, it wasn't the normal sort of party they'd have, but I think they had over 100 there, out on the course, playing around in the obstacles and having a bit of socialising at last. And also that their next events, which are on the 12th of September, have been given the nod by the local council, so it is a COVID-secure event. So at the moment, subject to government restrictions, the nuclear races events will be going ahead on the 12th of September. So there is Blast, Blackout, and there's a Rookie Blast as well for 4 to 14-year-olds.
Yeah,
so
which is great. It's a good weekend, that one.
I think we'll have to take a trip down there to see Mr. Parrish and the team.
Yeah, well, that's if we're we can go down and race, obviously, but in terms of, I don't think there's going to be an events area. Say again, sorry, Kev.
Say hello from afar.
Yeah. It's just it's always nice to take the magazine stand down there and things into to make a weekend of it. But the trouble is, I don't think they're able to make it. How did you describe it? Like COVID safe or
so COVID secure? Yeah.
COVID secure. That's it. I don't think that they can have the events area to still be able to get in those brackets of being deemed safe and secure. So I think that's something that people are going to obviously miss this year, aren't they? But it is probably good news for the pubs around the local area, because their carvery numbers will be through the roof, no doubt, won't they? If there's no burger vans and stuff there.
And then also I mentioned on the last podcast about the season passes for Nuclear were selling out. And I think, because I said the first 40 are available were at £160, they'd sold out. Then the next 40 at 170 had sold out. And now the next 50 at 180 have sold out. The next 50 at 200 have sold out. So there's now well, I don't know how many, but they have put 100 up for sale at 220. And that's the last bracket then. So they're the last season passes that are available. That's the normal season pass, which is 5 races and party. There are other options where you get season pass with the Nuclear Challenge Cup, season pass with the Nuclear Challenge Cup and Oblivion Extreme, season pass with the Oblivion Extreme, but they're all in the last sort of brackets now of limited tickets available.
Yeah, and even at that price, it's incredible value.
And it's nice to see people are still putting the money into OCR as well. Despite everything that's going on at the moment, a lot of people are really tentative about where and how they're spending the money. So it's great to see that they're still putting the money into OCR, which is fantastic. Yeah,
I think, and in terms of organisations that you know your money's going to be safe with, obviously Nuclear are one of those such organisations. They're not exactly a fly by night. They're not going to just come and go and just shut things down because things get a little bit tough. James and team obviously and sweat, blood and tears for this amount of time to be able to build it up from to just drop it just like that. So in terms of big, massive news, obviously the last couple of weeks have been, there's been a dark cloud hanging over everyone with the Garmin outage. What a disaster that was. Everyone crying into the cereals that the 5K PB that they'd just got was not going to get the attention it deserved.
It didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. So people were frantically pulling off their files to stick them on Strava. Apparently Strava's, like the data that went through that what usually was down by something ridiculous like 40%. So it just goes to show how many people sync their Garmin accounts to Strava. And it's just basically like a through flow of data rather than it being specifically just through Strava for there to be that bigger drop in the amount of bits and pieces what were posted up. But it were ransomware attack apparently, weren't it? So, but they have put a big thing out to say that don't worry, we don't think anyone's data was stolen or anything like that. But obviously, although it does affect people's tracking, and if they're really into the training, then obviously that's going to bother them because they need to be able to track every little bit and pieces. But it even took down like the Garmin aviation sites. So can you imagine like being in a light aeroplane and just solely relying on this Garmin device, and all of a sudden it's like it's no longer a PB you want to be tracking. It's we're getting down to ground safely, isn't it? So yeah, they even took down that. So they must have known what they were doing to have taken that down. It's not like it. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, button. So I'm still old school. I'm on Runtastic.
Oh wait.
I think I downloaded that about 6-7 years ago, and yeah, I still use that. I just can't bother. I think I have got Strava, but it's just I don't like using new things.
You just have Strava's very much like Runtastic, to be honest, but obviously you have to pay for the privilege to actually get a decent amount of data back now, which is not a big deal if you like that data. It is just another thing to be paying out for, though, isn't it? Which is a bit of a pain. And then, so something else that I really want to mention, if you've been around OCR for a while, you'll know of a guy called Adam Jacobs, and he's a bit of a OCR veteran. He's sort of one of the guys when Pete Reese moved away from Mudstickle. Adam was one of the guys who came in and tried to sort of keep things on the straight and narrow and what have you. And he's just completed a so for the fastest known time, he's just set a new fastest known time for the Herefordshire Way, I think it is. And he ended up running a total of 195 miles in 56 hours and 56 minutes. That's 195 miles. Now, bearing in mind, when he set out, he only thought he would be running something between 180, I think he said, and 185. But because of the detours, because they were building a bypass or something in one area, and obviously a few little bits and pieces where he'll have got lost along the way, he ended up doing 195 and still beat what was the standing record at that time. So that's one thing I couldn't find, though. I don't know what the old record was, but either way, he's beat it. So
it's just madness.
It is, yeah. But can you imagine, though, setting out and thinking, sort of counting down the miles and then realising, hold on a minute, I'm nowhere near finish line. I've still got like another 50 miles to go.
Say what happened to my Garmin?
Well, it weren't that weekend, though, was it? Although there were a couple of fastest known times that were being set. It must be this cluster of weekends that were around now. So we're in the start of August, so maybe middle of July to the end of July, if you're listening sort of further down the road. It must be the time of year in the UK that people go out because it's favourable weather to set these fastest known times, because there's been quite a few recently. And one was on the weekend where Garmin was down, so they ended up using like a Suntoe or something instead to track it, to replace what would have been a Garmin device ordinarily. But I think Adam wasn't. I don't think it was that same weekend, so he didn't get hit by that. Luckily, can you imagine if it just dropped and you had no way of tracking it halfway through?
Yeah,
you'd be absolutely gutted, wouldn't you? Because you have to be able to provide that proof, don't you, as well, for it to be tracked. But well done, Adam. Amazing work. Obviously, a big shout out to his wife Amy and his mum apparently as well. Helped him along massively to get him to that finish line. And anyone who knows Amy knows that she's already a veteran of doing bonkers things like this anyway. She likes doing stuff that breaks her body.
I don't like driving that far.
Pardon?
I don't like driving that far.
Yeah, it is. It's a fair old distance. No, to be fair, though, you're right. It is 195 miles. If you looked and someone said, do you want to drive this far for something? Unless it were really worthwhile, you'd probably think twice. Oh, and also he raised, I think he had a target of about £1,000 and he's managed to raise 1,430 so far when I checked before the podcast this evening. So that's a cracking figure as well, isn't it? Nearly £1,500. Is a cracking amount to raise, and I know it's for. We won't really go too much into it, but it's for a charity that's quite dear to his heart and that is affected by. So that's a cracking effort. Well done, Adam. Obviously, because we've been off the radar for a couple of weeks, we've not really got any listener mail or anything. So anyone who has got anything for us, it would be ace to get some audio messages, please. I'm going to be pestering a few of you because I know some of you have said, I've got such and such a question for you, but then you just never send it in. So
Bottle jobs.
Pardon?
Bottle jobs.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be pestering a few people for those anyway. So we should have some decent discussions for next week. What else have we got? I think that's everything from me this week, Kevin. Have you got anything else?
I think that's what. Obviously, now when you go into shops, face coverings are mandatory unless you're exempt. So we've had a lot of people snapping up our buffs. So we're selling the Obstacle Race magazine buffs. They look a lot more stylish than your standard face masks. And they're £5 and plus £1 postage and packing. So if you want any, if you email Caroline@obstacleracemagazine.com and she'll be able to sort you out the details of how to grab hold of some.
I've heard it's what all cool kids wear.
I wear one.
Is
that poo-pooed, that idea?
It goes against the grain on that one, I'm afraid, Kev. Right, so if you've enjoyed this episode, and you're maybe a first-time listener or you don't already, please click the subscribe button on whatever directory you currently listen on. If you're listening on YouTube, please click the subscribe button, because we seem to be getting a hell of a lot more listens on YouTube, or a lot more people clicking on it than are actually subscribed. And it'd be cool to have you along for the ride and subscribing and clicking that like button.
Yeah, if you subscribe on YouTube, then also click on the notifications every time we upload a new video. You'll get notified of that. I mean, to think this is episode 31 in the year where there's been no OCRs, I think we've done pretty well. They're not perfect, but we're getting there. We are. It's good, and it's been a shame really, because obviously we don't like missing them, but there could be so much for us to talk about. How have we actually managed to fill 31 episodes?
I don't know.
Phil might not be the right word, but we found things to talk about for 31 episodes. A lot of it might be repetitious, but
everything from Garmin news to IKEA updates. So it's a one-stop shop for everything, isn't it? But yeah, right. So thank you very much for joining me, Kevin.
No problem.
Thank you, everybody, for listening again. And don't forget to click that subscribe button. And we shall talk to you again next week. Cheers, Kev.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.